My name is Mr. Auerbach. I will be your science teacher today. And we're talking about cells. And, well, sort of. We're starting with a new topic today. One of the points of cell theory is that all cells come from other cells, except for the first one. Right now, what we do know is that all cells come from other cells. And so the question is, how does that happen? Well, that's what we're going to learn today. This is what we're talking about today. We're talking about the life of a cell. Whoa.
The life of a cell. It must be so complicated.
Otherwise known as AKA, AKA, also known as the cell cycle. So what does that mean? What does a cell spend most of its time doing?
Eating other cells.
Doing stuff.
Doing stuff.
Eating.
Just like you guys. Okay. I'm gonna verge a little bit awkward here, but okay. We all reproduce, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, hopefully you guys will wait a little bit, but
I have 3 of them.
yeah. I waited till I was 33 myself. I don't know how old were you? When
Young.
Yeah. But
Girl.
younger. Yeah. Well, the point is, we're not doing it all the time.
No.
Not reproducing at all times. Most of the time, cells aren't reproducing either. Cells spend most of their. I'm going to draw it as a cycle, and a cycle is anything where, not bad. I'm good at circles.
Awesome.
Yeah, right. It's a little bit of oval. But the point is that a cycle always ends where it began. That's anything that can be called a cycle has its end right where its beginning was. And so we'll call this the cell cycle. It's the life of a cell, really. Jimmy the cell. We'll draw Jimmy here. And here he is. Jimmy the cell. That's his nucleus. And
make it that big? Okay.
What's that? You can make it smaller, but I mean, don't make it too small because you're gonna have to write stuff around it. And here's the thing. So Jimmy the cell, eventually, Jimmy the cell is going to reproduce, and he's going to make Jimmy the cell and Jimmy the cell. You know why? Because cells make copies of themselves. They don't.
Get twins.
It's not like Jimmy the cell meets. Here we go.
Mrs.
Pam cell.
Those are sexy lips.
Oh God.
It's not like Jimmy the cell meets Susie the cell and they like, you know, hubba hubba, waka waka. It's not like that at all. Cells are solitary reproducers. I'm not going to even go there. But the point is, cells are they're reproducing themselves, but they don't spend but a little bit of their time actually reproducing. So I would say so the point is, Jimmy the cell's reproductive antics happen in a little portion of his life. And this is a process we're going to learn about starting tomorrow. Smack, 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 smack. I'm over here.
Guys to shut up.
Now he's telling Trevor to shut up.
You stop listening. You stop talking. How about that?
Yeah. Okay.
You stop listening to him.
Okay.
You stop talking to him. You both start listening to me. So Jimmy's reproduction happens in a phase called mitosis. And that's a whole other cycle within a cycle, and we'll learn all the steps of that a little bit later in time. But for right now, that's not really what we're talking about, because that's only like a little wedge of Jimmy's life. Most of Jimmy's life is spent in what's called Interphase. That's not an H. That's an upside down I. Interphase. Inter. What does inter mean? Like if we just take apart that word inter. Inter. What does inter mean? Like the. What's that? In what?
You're in something.
Interior. Well, intra means within. Inter means in between. So interphase is all the stuff that happens in between mitosis phases. So pretty much the cell cycle breaks everything down in between reproduction and then the rest of our life. So anyway, most of the time, most of the life of a cell is spent just being a cell. And in interphase, all right over here, is just a cell being a cell. And that means that there's some metabolism, there's some food to eat, there's some oxygen to take in, there's some waste to get rid of, there's some growing to do, but it's all basically it's in between mitosis phases. So a cell being a cell. Now, there's just to make things more complicated, scientists do break down the interphase into 3 different parts, and well,
What? Can I help you? Stop looking at me.
so I guess we're going this way. By the way, here's the arrow part. All right. So let's say that this is the part where the cell divides, right? And so Jimmy arrives on the scene like right here. Let's say or right here. This is when Jimmy's daddy Jimmy divided into 2, right here. And then so here's Jimmy. He appears, and he's an itty bitty. I better not use red. Hold on. He's an itty bitty little cell. And he just divided. Here's his daddy over here, Jimmy.
Poor Jimmy.
Yeah.
Jimmy Neutron.
And so Jimmy goes through what's called the G1 phase. And a lot of books and things will tell you that that's the growth phase. You can think of it as that, but it's really called the gap phase. They're really into semi-trendy clothes and I should say less stuff. But anyway, what's really happening though is that Jimmy's growing. Jimmy grows a little bit every day.
No.
Wow, that's a big blob of egg.
And so at this point, at the end of Jimmy's first gap phase here, the cell stops because it's time for the cell to start thinking about reproduction, believe it or not. You know, you guys know how it is. You get about...
Think about it. It just kind of happens.
Well, you know, unfortunately, yeah, it does. But so Jimmy's like, hey, I'm big now. Maybe I should reproduce. And so Jimmy talks to his dad, Jimmy, and Jimmy tells Jimmy, wait, son, you're not ready yet. You've got to replicate your DNA. My DNA? What's my DNA? Well, Jimmy, inside of all of us, we have DNA. It's the instructions for our manual. Really, I did that? Where is it? It's in your nucleus, son. And Jimmy's dad, Jimmy, was right.
God, I feel bad for him.
And so Jimmy has what's called chromosomes inside of him, which is what his DNA is held in. And our DNA is actually kind of spread out inside of our nucleus. And what happens is that when Jimmy goes into the next phase, which is called the S phase, S phase is when DNA replicates. What does replicate mean?
Copy.
Copy. DNA replicates. DNA makes a copy of itself. And so what happens is, so Jimmy's got this long string of instructions inside of him that are, you know, his DNA, his instructions for doing everything. And if there's gonna be two Jimmys, then Jimmy's got to make a copy of the DNA, and that's exactly what happens here in the S phase. So here's Jimmy. I kind of had to compress him a little bit here. Here he is, and here's his nucleus, and here's his DNA. We're going to learn in a little bit, like in a couple of weeks, what the DNA code is made of, but just know that it's a set of instructions, and what happens is Jimmy's going to make a new copy. How about red?
Or blue.
So what happens is that the information copies itself into an exact copy. Okay? And so that's all that happens in S. After the S phase, then what you have is Jimmy is basically ready to go, except he has to take care of a little business. So we have the G2 phase. Whoa! We have the G2 phase, and that's the second gap. And what happens in the second gap is all the other stuff inside of Jimmy copies itself. So the DNA is already copied. Here's our two copies of the DNA, right? The red and the orange. But now all the other organelles, like the mitochondria, all those little mitochondria make copies of themselves. Everything makes copies. So
Not everything makes copies.
Yeah.
not everything.
Copy machines. Like what?
Everything inside of the cell gets copied. The organelles replicate. And so pretty much when Jimmy gets to the end of the G2 phase, he's ready to go. That's when he goes through the process of what's called mitosis and cell division. The book likes to use a word called cytokinesis, which really just means cell division. Cytokinesis. So, next time you cut your dinner in half, you can call that dinner kinesis. Kinesis is just the splitting. Cyto means cell. Mitosis and cell division. And this is the part where Jimmy actually gathers up he winds up his two different strands of DNA now. We're going to learn this. We're going to learn how this process actually works tomorrow. This will be enough for today. So I'm really almost done, folks. The point is that in the mitosis phase, notice how in the other phases, Jimmy's DNA is all spread out. But what happens is he has to wind it up. It's like moving day, right? When you move, you don't take all your stuff and just dump it all in the back of your pickup truck. You put it in boxes first, tie them up or whatever. Like, you know, Christmas lights at their house. Anybody put up Christmas lights at their house? When it comes that time, day after Thanksgiving or whatever, you reach into the box and you grab those Christmas lights, and if you didn't do it right, they all come out as one great big stuck together bundle. That's what you want to avoid with your DNA. And so what you really should do is at the end of every Christmas season, you take your Christmas lights and you bundle them up and you tie them off and you wrap them up and you put them each in individual bags. And you know, we don't really do that, but we wish we did every year, because that way they're together. And so when the time comes and it's time to have 2 new copies of the cell, each one is going to have 1 copy of the DNA. So that maybe this one goes over here, this one goes over here, and so this is what we've got. So really, it's one of these things that, because it gets broken into different phases, people overcomplicate it for themselves. But more or less,
what's that letter after the O for cyto something?
K. Cytokinesis. Kinesis. So let's just look at this really quick one time through and make sure that we're all sort of together on this here. We've got, if we start at the beginning, let's say this is the beginning here. Little Jimmy was just born, right? Just hatched, just divided. During the gap phase, the first gap phase right here, little Jimmy's going to grow. He's going to live. He's going to do some metabolism. He's going to become a great big cell. And Jimmy's mind is going to turn to reproduction. And Jimmy is going to enter the S phase, where what he's going to do is he's just going to make copies of his DNA. That's pretty much what happens in the S phase. Jimmy makes... What?
Never mind. But
I feel like he knows what it is.
yeah, me too.
Oh, like sex? You're saying a sex phase? No, that's this. That's the mitosis, really. I mean, I don't know. Copying your DNA is like, I don't know. That's not the exciting part. But anyway,
but he doesn't replicate himself.
No, he doesn't.
It's just the DNA.
Just the DNA, right? It's just the DNA. So all he's doing is making another copy of the DNA that's inside of his nucleus. Everything else pretty much remains the same. But then he goes through the G2 phase, where he's getting ready. G2, you can call that getting ready.
She can get.
Not getting busy.
No, it's getting ready.
Getting ready.
Getting ready to have babies.
Putting on nail polish.
That's right, putting on nail polish.
I don't know.
Dressing up real nice for himself. Okay, this is getting a little weird, everybody.
Yeah.
But, okay, so we've got the getting ready phase here. You know, maybe this time, I don't know. Maybe he did. That's okay. It was just far enough. But so they're getting ready. All the organelles are going to replicate, and we're going to make final preparations. And then finally, the M phase, which of course means married, because, you know.
Well, when they're married, everything.
You don't want premarital mitosis, folks. You just don't.
So he married himself.
Well, you know, for a cell, that's, you know, for a single cell, that's about what you got to look forward to. You know, he's very fond of himself, actually. Okay, I'm not going to go one step further with that analogy, but the point is, mitosis is when division happens, and we end up with 2 little cells. Actually, the one thing we'll learn about mitosis is that the nucleus goes away, but we'll worry about that tomorrow when we actually talk about the phases of mitosis. Okay, folks, so there you have it. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the cell cycle. Cody has a question.
But nobody
cares
cares
about
about
the camera off.
That's okay. We'll take our chances.
Alright, when you say mitosis, it sounds like mitosis.
My toe,
Should
sis.
turn the camera off.
Should have turned the camera off.
My toesies.
Thank you very much, everybody. I'm Mr. Arbach, and I have been your science teacher. Okay.
You're like crazy.